And good afternoon or good morning to everybody who's watching. We are hanging out here at the Kriges residence in Hartbeespoort with Carel and Karen Krige. And I can tell you we have been well entertained. So if ever you get a chance, invite yourself. If you can hang out at the Kriges residence, it's something special. So there are many great reasons to hang out here. But today we're going to talk about something more serious, not fun really. Not fun talk, and for many people, uncomfortable talk. For many people, when we talk about cancer, it's a subject you rather stay away from because you don't know how to approach it. You don't know, even though many people are in some way influenced by the big subject of cancer. So, Carel and Karen, thanks for having us over today. It's hard to think we're working the way you've treated us, but we're not working. We're here to talk, to just converse about this very sensitive subject, as I said. Let's just start. Carel, you've been working for Dr. Deo many years with the schools and recently with pop-ups, skills training center. Yeah. And in the middle of this journey, this big thing happened. Why don't you just pick up and tell us how it started? When did you hear you had cancer, and where do you want to pick up the story?
Yes, I think it happened in 2012. For the first time I was confronted with it. It was actually 2 days before the school started when I had this pain in the side of my body, and it became Friday afternoon, and Karen said, "Listen, you've got kidney stones." And I was afraid of that because they said that is like a man giving birth, you know. So off I went to the doctor. And they admitted me to hospital, did the scans, and suddenly realized that not the side where the pain was, but the other side, the other kidney, was actually just one big tumor. And so I was confronted with that. They immediately said they had to remove the kidney, that they did. And that was 4 years ago. And since then, every 6 months we go for our scans and tests, and every time celebrating life. God has given us life. Actually, God has healed me so completely that I didn't even got radiation or chemo or anything.
So after they took out the tumor, you were all clean?
I was all clean. I didn't even take any other medication, never did. And until January this year, when I went for my follow-up scans, they saw tumors in my lungs and wanted to do biopsy. Did biopsies, and then realized it was this kidney cancer that has now spread. They call it the metastasis phase, that is phase 4 of this clear cell kidney cancer or sarcoma. So it's something that actually normal chemo cannot help for it. So it is the final stage of that cancer. So fortunately there is new development on the market, and I praise God for the scientific research that has been done on it, where they focus on those cancer cells and try to reduce the growth so that it doesn't grow so fast. So I had to accept that, make peace with that, and that brought a whole number of things that we had to think of, adjust, make sense of it, and that was our journey since January.
You said you had to make peace with that, and now it's not just so simple to make peace with that. I want to hear briefly from Karen. He talks about this, the peace. I know he's going to explain still, but just briefly tell us your positioning, hearing your husband has cancer, hearing it's critical. And how did you cope with that?
I just want to take it back to 2012 when Carel lost his one kidney. Every 6 months he has to go back for all these tests. So we really started celebrating life back in 2012. And I can still recall the first time that he went back for his tests. That morning, I was so overwhelmed with the feeling, what will happen when the doctor says, you know, the cancer is back. And I was just still in my room. Carel went to the doctor already, and I had like in half an hour, and I just cried out to God, you know, and it's like I heard God speaking. It's like in my ear, I just heard, you know, just build an altar. And I said, God, I don't have time to build an altar this morning. And I just felt of taking all the pillows that I could get in the house, and I just put it on the bed. And in that moment, I just felt like I'm going to lie over this pile of pillows that I just built an altar. And the moment I did that, I just felt God is in the room. And I was just sobbing before I went to the doctor, and I heard God's voice just saying, I provided a lamb for you. So we went to the doctor, and then we could celebrate when she said, you know, the cancer, he says, okay. And I must say, now this year, the moment that the doctor said, you know, the cancer is back, I was so ready to celebrate, because we could do that every year, you know.
I think people find that hard to understand. I think when people hear you saying that, it's like, how? Mm-hmm. You really?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, when we say we celebrate, our hope is in God. You know, our hope is in Him. And God just gave me this verse. I am a worshiper, so I came back home, and when we heard that the cancer is back, I just went and I just sat in front of the piano. And all that I could think of, that God says in Hebrews 13 verse 5, that He will never leave us. And I started writing the song, and it's like God just gave me this hope that He will never leave me. He will never, never leave me. Doesn't matter what the outcome is, my hope is in Him.
That's wonderful, very inspiring, Karen. Okay, Carel, take us further. So, your journey now.
I think for me, because I have been a child of God for very long, and I'm secure in Him. I know many people have questions about God and where's God. That is not where my confrontation went, but the practical fears of, have I done enough to look after my family? And now, if this goes through, I won't have enough, because I had my financial planning done, and I need another 7 years before I retire, you know, for this. And if this happens, then I would not be able to make sure that the pension is ready and the house is secure and everything. So that was my biggest fear. And actually, I lied awake during nights thinking, Lord, what am I going to do? Because if I cannot continue working, then I think that is my purpose as a husband, you know, to make sure that everything is secure, and it wasn't. And then the Lord took me back to a lesson that I've learned back in 2012. Just one of the lessons I've learned in the ICU when I was lying there, where the Lord really taught me, I will give you every day the manna that you need today. And now 4 years later, it is as it was as if the Lord said, do I have to teach you this again? You know, I did help you last time. You didn't even received therapy, and the right people were at the right time to be there for you. Why do you think it'll be different now? So it brought some relief, but it didn't put the money in the bank, you know. And so just soon after that, there was money coming to my side, because then I realized that this medication is so expensive. It's about 26,000 Rand a month, and the medical aid will fund just over half of the year of that, but the rest I need to pay 20% of. Now, 20% is still a large sum of money every month. And then this money came in that we could set aside, and just that relief, okay, we're okay for the rest of the year. And by next year, all my children would have completed their studies, so we'll be able. So that brought some relief, but I still didn't have the house, and I was worrying about the fact that I might stop working and stuff. And also in that regard, the Lord just provided supernaturally that I cannot tell you that relief. The Lord did come through. And many times when I think about that, I don't have answers for this because God is always good. But I think I want to believe that the Lord has honored years of faithfulness. Just say, don't worry, if you build my house, I'll build yours, you know.
Wonderful. All right, so let's talk about the future. The future is a crazy concept now. When something like this happens, you always dream these dreams about the future. You have a perspective of the future in your mind. And suddenly the whole future has changed for both of you, the concept of future, and then together with that, the concept of the present and of living today with God. So talk to me about that. How do you integrate that now with your walk with God?
I also want to go back to a lesson I've learned in 2012 in the ICU, because I was brought up as a true blue blood Calvinist Pentecostal boy, you know, so everything was sin, and we had this song that we sang in church, Must I Go With Empty Hands?
You're going to sing it for us?
No, rather not.
But there was always this force driving me. It was not good enough. You have to do more for the Lord. And one evening it was as if the Lord appeared to me, and my whole life was playing out before me, and the highlights were not the highlights that was actually the achievements that my mother would put on Facebook, for instance. You know, it was much more things related to my calling and purpose from a young age. You know, I relived the first person that I led to the Lord, for instance, and I relived instances where I just cried with people because I didn't have answers for them or counseling them, and at the end of that, it was as if the Lord said, "You will not come with empty hands. You're good enough for me. I love you as you are," and that brought such a relief that I knew I was ready to go back then, and even now, there's nothing that I feel I still have to do it. I take every day with the opportunities that are for today, and that's it. I believe the Lord has called me for obedience and not for the results that we sometimes chase after. And so in that sense, I feel comfortable. I think the other questions was, my son phoned me from Nelspruit, and he said, "Dad, if you go now, there are many things that I still have to learn." So he came up and he said, "I'm going to live with you for 3 days." So he slept on a stretcher in front of my bed every evening, and every day he went with me to every meeting, and in the car, wherever we would go, he would ask questions. How do I deal with this? He's just been married. How do I deal as man of the house, as priest of the house in this area and that area? And he said, "Listen, I have to ask it to you now because I might not have time to learn that." And I think as a family, it brought us together in a very practical sense to say, okay, unfortunately, I think it's that we do not have the spiritual questions, but there are many practical things that I realized I have to scale down. I have to manage my energy. So there were certain things that I had to resign from, and I had to go to the leadership of Doxa and say, "Listen, this is what's going to happen. I need to make sure that I make the best of where we are so that the ministry and the work that I'm involved in do not suffer. But what is the most important things for my life now?" And I believe it's my relationship with God and my relationship with my family. Mm-hmm. So I have to scale down, make sure that I use my energy wisely every day for that.
I just want to contribute that I think I'm very more emotional than Carel. I think my love language is something else that, well, I don't think so. I know that my love language is something else than Carel's. And I have to, Carel has always taught me, he always asked me, Karen, just see what glasses do you have on? With which glasses are you looking at the circumstances? So I have to speak with my spirit. I have to speak into my emotions, not to go more to the emotional side. Because when Carel comes home, I can see that he's not always healthy. And then we have to deal with that. And I think just...
And you are healthy.
I am so healthy. and sometimes he will just come home and he will just come and lie on the couch. And then, you know, I just think, oh my goodness, you know, is this going to be our life from now? Is this the way that we are going to cope with life? Is this illness that is in the house? And then I have to speak with my spirit. I have to speak into my emotions. And I think that's the main thing for me at this stage, you know, just to bear with Carel that is not always feeling.
So we have to enjoy the good moments and understand there are moments that it might not be.
Yes. About a month ago, we went down to Cape Town. Just friends of us just blessed us with, you know, with they just said that here's our house, just go and stay there. And because we had to speak about stuff that is so practical and so real that we have to face in the house. And it was very necessary just to, you know, just get the practical side on this. Because, yes, we trust in God for sure. We trust in God for healing. That's the first prize. But what if?
Let me ask you very frankly, Carel, what are the doctors saying? I mean, how much time do you have now?
The literature says the one thing they say is that less than 8% live 5 years. The average was until 2-3 years ago 2 years. Now with this new medication, it has doubled up, you know. But I think in the beginning, ignorance helped me because I didn't believe I was so sick. I mean, the previous time it went well. And then somebody phoned me with exactly the same problem. And after he told me how sick he was, I came home confused because I realized, listen, I'm not ready for this. And I had to work this through and to understand, listen, I don't really care what the diagnosis or the certificates say. I'm going to make the best of it. Mm-hmm. And I take every day as it is. And I did sort it out with the Lord that I'll be responsible with my energy. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe that I'm going to die within a month or two.
Now, so I want to ask you because I think some people may, when they find themselves in your situation, feel, well, I might as well stop living. You know, I might as well just sit at home and watch television. And you know, and I know that you don't do that. So just elaborate on how you still find purpose, and you know, how do you direct that sense of purpose now?
I sat down and just listed the gifts and callings and the times in my life that I really felt that my life was purposeful, and that is around counseling and around ministering. But I don't want to take up the responsibility of that leadership and management and financial controls and stuff anymore. And I'm looking so forward to that, because I get energized whenever I counsel people or I pray with people. I feel much better afterwards. So I want to put more time into that. And there was a time where I felt I have moved away from my original calling and gift, because you know, your career can sometimes ask you to do things that actually is not your main gifting, but you have to do it, and your responsibility forces you to do that, and you do that. But somehow within you lose something. And it was great for me to go and sit and make peace and say, listen, I can say now, I'm not going to do that. But these things that energizes me, I'm going to do that for the fullest.
And when you get up out of bed in the morning, do you look forward to the day?
Yeah. I still actually am responsible for 2 responsibility areas. I mean, it was after 3 months, and I really wasn't well during the first 3 months. The side effects of the medication really had an effect. You know, I had sores in my mouth and my throat and my nose, and I was tired, and I had diarrhea every day, and it was not. And I also thought, I'm not going to be able to live like this for the next 10 years, you know. And then this person told me he immediately went off on declared medical unfit, and he decides to do one thing a day. Every day he stands up and decides what's he going to do with his energy today. And I thought, I'm still running out of the house at 6:30 every morning, and then in the evenings when I come home to Arties, I take up the church responsibilities I have. And so I realized, listen, maybe this is not good. On the other hand, I'm also not going to do one thing a day, you know. So I look at the needs around me, but I also look at what the Lord tells me to do. And I'm an opportunist, so whenever I see something that I can be involved in, I want to. Yeah.
Karen, what makes you proud about your husband right now?
I must say, I think Carel is very brave at this stage. Just getting up in the morning, even if you don't feel like it. I must say, I try to appreciate the small things in life with Carel, and what makes me proud is the way, whenever he's not feeling well, he will try and still motivate us to do the best we can, and not focusing on himself. I think that's a main thing in Carel's life, that he I'm searching for the right word now, but the way that he encourages us as a family still to do the calling that God has called us for, even when I know he's not feeling well, even if he can't eat the food that I prepared for him every day. Just being there for other people. I just think not focusing on himself.
I really think that is important. If you keep on focusing on the negative, you will never do anything. And I don't want to give the enemy that satisfaction as well. You know, when I raised my children, and whenever one of them had a tantrum, the best way to deal with the child tantrum is to not give it attention. And I feel likewise.
Okay, Carel, so now I want to ask you, so you're the one that's ill, but obviously Karen is going through a traumatic period as well. What makes you proud about Karen at this point?
Yeah, I think the way she supports me is, and I know she has to sacrifice much for this now. You know, back in Cape Town, she said, listen, I've been robbed now. Every year you said next year we will have more time for us two. Now you're sick, now I've been robbed. And she had to work through that, and I'm really proud that she's taking it head on every day. We're making the best of every moment.
I think as a family, we try to smell the roses. We make time, you know, to smell the roses and spend time together, you know. Life is so short.
Yeah, I think we celebrate the family as well. You're right. Now, as we move into the future, now we have to decide where to buy a house, where to settle. And the main question for us as family is, where will the support system be? You know, when I'm not there, where will it be? Will they be will all of them live in close proximity so that they are there for each other? And that's mainly why we didn't buy a house yet, because with our children coming to the city from Nelspruit, and they have to settle, we first want to see where everything will pan out and how it will pan out before we settle.
The other day, Carel had the privilege to buy a new car, and we signed all the papers, came home, and the next day he said, "Karen, you know, we made a mistake. I mustn't put the car on my name. I must put the car on my name." So it was such an emotional thing just to realize, oh my goodness, this is such a reality, you know, of things that we didn't think about. We try not to go there. We try not to think about it, but it's such a practical reality, you know, of facing this giant.
All right. I want to open up the conversation to any last things maybe, or any very important things you feel people should know. You don't want them to miss this in this conversation. So anything, Carel, where do you want to go with this?
I think there are 3 things that I guide my life by. The first one is I make sure that my identity in Christ is settled. And if I know I'm a child of God, and I know I'm a new creation, then I need to get my mind and my emotions aligned with that. And so many times we believe something, but when we start talking and thinking, we start believing lies. And that takes discipline for me to bring myself back to, but this is not what the Lord said. I'm not a child of fear. I'm a child of God. And in so many areas I have to bring that back, because if I lose my joy and I'm going to lose my positive attitude, not towards life but towards God, then I'm dead in the water already. So it's first my identity, then this life and world view that I have to renew my mind constantly every day. And thirdly, make sure that I live my purpose. And many times we might think, this is my purpose, and now I've been robbed from my purpose, for instance. But that's not true, because in every circumstance, God has a purpose for me. So my question is, Lord, what do you want me to do in this circumstance today? Now, it might be different from the past, but it's still just as relevant. And if I live like this, then I can clearly, confidently say, death has lost its sting. You know, there's nothing in it, nothing to fear in death.
Beautiful. All right, Karen, and any last thought from you?
You know, you just said, Carel said, death actually has lost its sting in the word cancer. And I think you can do that. I ask God to take out the sting of cancer, because the reality is that the things that we hope for and dream of, that God is our God. He is a faithful Father. He's our friend. He's our helper in the time of need. And I trust that when we conclude this journey, I will say that, God, you are my hope, even if we have to face this giant.
I want to tell both of you that for me personally, you are an incredible inspiration. And I know for many, many people out there, you're like a pillar of strength in this very troublesome time. And I just want to bless you and thank you. Thank you for still inspiring in the midst of your journey. And to me, that is what hope is. I always say to people that to me, the ultimate of hope is when in times like these, you become hope. You know, the time when you actually need hope, you become hope. And that's what Jesus did in his toughest times. He became hope for those around him. And to me, that's the greatest compliment to tell somebody. And that's what I want to tell you, that for me and for many people, you are a pillar of hope. And thank you for that. And God bless you.
Bless you.
Bless you. Thank you.